All right, let's dive in. Number one, what is the footprint of the stairwell for a typical switchback stair in a small hotel you are designing if the floor to floor height is 11.6? So first thing to note here is be careful on these things. Often you'll see something where it talks about the floor to ceiling height. And while that's useful for lots of different design aspects, it's not what you would need to understand a stair. Stair has to be floor to floor. That's an easy mistake. So this one is floor to floor, so that should be pretty good. First thing I'm going to do is change 11.6 into inches. So that's 138 inches, I believe, just because it's going to make it a little easier for us to analyze. And then we're going to take a quick look at the answers. So A is 15 foot by 6 foot, B is 18 foot by 9 foot, C 15 by 9, and D 18 by 6. Now, anybody that has actually put in an egress stair into office plan or hotel plan or anything like that will probably recognize pretty fast. And I'm just going to jump to the quick on this one and just say the largest one here is going to be the answer. It's going to be B, 18 by 9. And we'll come back to why that is. But if you can answer a question like that and feel very confident, more power to you. If you can't, then what you're looking for here is, well, how do I quickly figure out what the issues here are? So in order to understand how big the footprint of the stair is, I'm first going to need to figure out, well, how many steps do I have? So this is why we figured out that 11.6 is equal to 138. So my first step is going to be saying, all right, 138 divided by 7 inches. And the reason I'm dividing it by 7 is because that's the maximum accessible riser height that I can have. So when I do that, I'm going to end up with, I don't remember the exact, but it's 19.7 something. Doesn't really matter. It's right in that range of 19 point something. You can't have a 0.7 riser. That wouldn't make any sense. It would be a death trap. People would trip on it all the time. So we immediately round up, and we're going to round up, so that's going to be 20 risers. Now, just sort of interestingly, I can then go back and say, all right, 138 inches divide by 20, and that's going to give me 6.9 inches. So that means each riser is 6.9. That's interesting. I actually don't need to know that for this to answer this question, but there you go. So main thing I'm figuring out here is I've got the 20 risers. So we start looking at a footprint of what the stairwell is going to look like. And you could actually draw this out if that was useful to you on your scratch paper, or just kind of do it in your head. None of this is particularly complex. So here's my my stairwell, and if I put a couple of dimensions on here, that dimension is going to be a minimum of 44 inches. It's possible in certain municipalities that might actually be 48 inches. So both of those are possibilities, but typically 44 inches is considered the minimum egress stair width. So I've got 44 and 44, and then whatever space in the middle there. So I'm roughly around 8 foot at a bare minimum, and much more likely to be a bit wider than that to give a little room for the railings in the middle. So right off the bat, before I've even done any real thinking about it, I can say that the 6 foot wide and the 6 foot wide can't possibly be the right answer. So the really only questions here, the only question left is it the 15 foot length or the 18 foot length? So let's figure out a couple of these things. So I've got the 44 inches there. And then the question is, how big is that? Well, we have the 20 risers, which means we have 10 risers on each side. So we're going to go through, put those in. I'm not actually counting there, so I'm just kind of putting them along. And the one thing that we quickly realize is that if we have 10 risers on each side, that means we have 9 treads. because there's a riser at the top and a riser at the bottom. So each tread is going to be 11 inches. So that means our total run there is 99 inches. Again, that's because it's a standard accessible stair is going to be a 7-11 stair, where it can't be more than 7 on the riser and it can't be less than 11 on the tread. Now, interestingly, if you actually look at the treads, the sort of classic accessible stair is going to look something like that. Not very well drawn, but you get the idea. So there's the 11 inches, but typically I actually get another little inch or so back underneath there. So the actual tread dimension is usually about 12 inches, but if you're looking at it from a plan standpoint, it's 11 inches clear because that other little angle gives you just a little bit more space for the toes. And the reason that you do that angle and not the sort of old school version where you have a little lip like that is that little lip, if you imagine somebody coming up with their boot, somebody with very thin ankles wearing a boot, that little spot right there becomes a trip hazard. So from an accessibility standpoint, these sort of angled risers are sort of more typical. And there's a few other ways you can do it, but the sort of classic is that angled for like a concrete stair or something, or steel stair. So we have the 11 inch, we have 99, that puts us there, 44 and plus the 99. If we sort of compare 18 foot is going to be, what, 216 inches, I believe. 15 foot should be 180. If we start adding those things up, we'll realize that we would only, for 15, if we subtract 180 minus 99 minus 44, we're only going to end up with about 30-some inches for this entire landing, where our door needs to be, where the travel path needs to be, where potentially you might have some other requirements of areas of refuge and things like that. And that's just not enough dimension that's left. So the 15-foot can't be right. It must be the 18-foot. So that's why we got to B. So that's a lot of drawing and figuring it out. But remember, all you're really thinking is, all right, well, how big is a stair? 44-inch minimum. Do two 44s. That's we're at almost 8 feet. We obviously, so we cross off the first two, A and D, right off the bat. And then it's just a matter of kind of, well, how big would it be? So I've got roughly 10 risers on each side. That gets me to 99. Like, you can do all that in your head without having to draw it out. We just drew it out so you could see it more easily. So the answer in this case, B, 18.9. Again, these kinds of questions are set up in order to be a simple question, but it's a simple question that requires you to sort of understand the gist of how stairs work and sort of important key accessibility dimensions, 7-11, 44, how the risers work when you start adding them up. So the thought here, like, they're not trying to trick you, they just want to find out that you can kind of grasp the gist of how a general stair works.
I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think just as a reminder, man, there can be so many sort of little details about stairs. These guys are testing again. Remember that famous T-shirt we still haven't made yet? They're testing for minimum competency, not for like
design
the
excellence.
gnat's ass.
Or,
like,
yeah.
So they're looking for a simple answer here.
Yeah, you're not looking to prove that you're the most beautiful designer ever. Like, that's not the point. So yeah, other issues here. The travel path, you could imagine being an issue. The railings, you'll note that railings always go beyond the risers. They go a foot past on either side, including getting the angle full down to the correct height. So the foot path can actually often be close to 2 feet past by the time you have the angle going. Those kinds of little issues, those are things you should know in order to be able to answer simple questions like this.